we're doing a Wized AMA. Please feel free to ask us any questions about Wized. So we've got our first question from Michael. He asks, what happens to data when using Airtable? I heard in a previous video that it's passed through Wized servers. What data is passed through, and is it encrypted?
Data is being passed through the Wized server only if you tick the box execute on server, but otherwise only authentication related requests are being passed through the Wized server, and that is because Airtable does not offer authentication logic out of the box. So we needed to configure that on our server. So whenever you're dealing with auth requests, these are going through the Wized server essentially.
So I believe Michael has a follow-up question. He asks, is the password encrypted? That is, can the user's password be seen by Wized employees?
Okay, I see what you mean. So first of all, we do not store any data. We only process it and send it further. So Wized is essentially like a proxy here. But we also have an encryption that we're using that basically encrypts all the passwords. So even if you open Airtable, you, the owner of the project, cannot see any of your users' passwords. So they are fully encrypted in that regard. And neither we nor you can see these passwords. You can just see basically a long string of nonsensical characters. So yeah, that's what you get basically.
Now, Mark asks, is there a way to push items to an array variable that's been created in the UI? I know it's possible via the JS API, but wondering if it can be done via Wized actions.
Oh yeah, so you're essentially asking if you can add new items to a variable that you created through the Wized UI. If that's your question, yes, you can. I basically showed that in the filtering and sorting request data videos that I created for Xano before we implemented Finsweet attributes, before we made Finsweet attributes compatible with Wized. So there's basically one video that we still decided to leave out there just because we are showing array manipulation and storing this in a custom variable and basically rendering data from that custom variable instead of from a request directly. So yes, you can definitely do that in the Wized interface as well.
You would type in the data as in comma separated values to be then able to use that data to test out the action or any functionality that you may have built if you don't have, let's say, the live data in the backend.
You could use it for that to just mock some data, but mainly what you want to do is manipulate the data that you're getting. So let's say you're getting data from Xano and you get basically a bunch of products and you want to filter and get just the products in a certain category. And you can do that right on the front end within the Wized interface. Or you can write a more complex algorithm that will extract only the items that you need, basically. So yes, you can definitely manipulate different arrays and render data from these arrays within Wized. So yeah, the use cases are endless here. Like, it's really up to your app what you're needing there. That will determine what you're going to write and the logic behind it.
Great. So moving on. Anna asks, can you please share how the black market works?
So the black market is essentially going to be a marketplace where you can buy different web apps. So you will be able to just pay for, let's say you will have the same projects that we have in our clonables, but probably with way more functionality. And then in order to clone that project, you will just need to pay. So if you're a developer, that's a huge opportunity. You can build apps basically for fun and put them out there on the marketplace to sell them. Or if you're just looking for a new business idea and you don't want to build it from scratch, then you can find a clonable and just customize it.
I think a perfect comparison would be the Webflow template marketplace. It's that, but for Wized, for web apps. And I am not sure if we can buy individual components or full build projects.
I know that for the beginning, we will not have components because we cannot copy and paste just small components from one project to the other for now. But we do have that functionality on our roadmap. So in the future, there might be also building blocks as well that we'll include. And one more thing that we didn't address is that when you're buying these type of apps, you'll have to then clone the backend, which might be Xano, Firebase, Superbase, etc. You'll have to clone the front end, which is Wized, and the Webflow project. So you'll always have these three parts, just like you do with regular clonables.
Great. So moving on, Himanshu asks, when is Wized getting full support of Firebase app? Firebase authentication has some major issues right now. You can't send the password reset /email update request for the created accounts, which is an important feature needed before launching a product.
Firebase has been, unfortunately, a little bit lower on our list of priorities for the extensions right now because most users have been no-code friendly users, but we are definitely planning to increase the support of features that we're offering within our built-in integration. But now, unfortunately, for some of the features, you have to create custom REST API requests and maybe even dabble a little bit into JavaScript to make things work. So unfortunately for now, it doesn't work. It's not at 100%, but there have been solutions being developed by our devs. Some of them will be launched with the Embed 2.0, and some of them will be added later. But we're definitely planning on doubling down on Firebase and Superbase as well. So yeah, a lot more support coming this way.
And Himanshu, you may probably know this, but Emanuel did record a video for Firebase auth, and we have a clonable for Firebase CRUD operation. Just two resources that could potentially help you. Okay, thank you, Emanuel. Now, moving on. Joseph Bate asks, from a total newbie perspective, when building an app, could I use Relume tables, flex-based, or should I use the CMS to develop a grid-style form to show data that has what I think are a more clear column and row structure?
To answer if you can use Relume tables, you absolutely can. If you want to use a regular HTML table, you can do that too. So whatever you want to use, you can. The only thing to keep in mind is that when you're dealing with this type of tables, you only want to render one element. And in your build, you only want to have the first item. And then once you're getting data from Wized, you're going to use that as a template element to render the rest of the elements. So sort of like when you're working with Webflow CMS, you basically create a design for one item, and then no matter how many items you have in the collection, they all have basically the same design with some field overrides. So it works the same way in Wized. You want to create just one element, and then once you connect Wized to Webflow, you basically use that template element to render a list from your database. So yes, you can use Relume components, or you can use a standard HTML table if you know how to create one.
Joseph Bates has a follow-up question. He asks, if building an application, should or could I build as far as possible with Webflow, then use Wized to manage the things Webflow can't do or that I need done?
I think if you can just resolve something with a simple JavaScript function, then you probably shouldn't just add Wized. But if you need authentication, if you need request handling, and you want to do all of that in a low-code friendly way, then yeah, go with Wized. So it really depends on your project and what you're trying to build. Like the way we work normally on Wized projects is we build the UI inside of Webflow, and then when we need to add request logic, authentication, and so on, then we do that with Wized.
So, next question. Michael asks, I built the Wanderlust Wized app 5 months ago. I am just now getting back into Wized as a solopreneur. What Wized apps would you suggest I add to my Wized portfolio for prospective SaaS type of clients?
I would suggest that you pick an app that looks, first of all, visually very appealing, because it creates a good first impression when the clients see that and see that it's working. And it would be good if you could also include something that's a bit more complex. And if clients see that you can basically create advanced functionality, like maybe integrating charts or building a whole marketplace yourself and so on, that creates trust, basically. So think about which project would create the most trust, and also which sort of projects I want to work on. So if you want to get projects that look more like marketplaces, create a portfolio of marketplaces. If you want to create dashboards and, show different analytics features and so on, and work on that type of stuff, then create a portfolio with that. So yeah, make sure it looks good, and also make sure that it works and that it's the type of work that you want to do in real life with clients.
Okay, moving on from Jeremy. As far as updating to the new configurator regarding attributes and form usage, is there anything we can do to prepare in advance? Insider knowledge.
In general, if you have already experience with Wized, things are going to be just a little bit easier. So handling form submissions is going to become a bit easier. You will have to add fewer Wized attributes and so on. There will be a little bit of changes in the UI. We will have only one request panel, which will have both of your data in and data out requests, but there aren't any major changes really for you as the user. We will make sure to create a full-on migration guide to show you how to move from V1 to V2, but it's going to be as straightforward as possible.
All right. Thank you for that answer, Emanuel. Next question from Michael. There's a big price jump with Xano between free and basic monthly subscription at around $70 to $80 per month, but it looks like a great tool. Is Airtable a good alternative? And briefly, what are the pros and cons of each?
Airtable has a lot of limitations. Basically, if you're building a simple tool, either for yourself or for your company, just an internal tool that not a lot of users will have access to, or if you're building just an MVP for the first 50, 100 users, then Airtable might be okay to start with. But if you need things like performance, that the requests load really, really fast, you're going to need to stick with something like Xano, Firebase, or Supabase. Also, when it comes to the functionality that you can implement, it's very limited with Webflow. Basically, Xano is a full-on backend, an API builder. You can create a lot of API endpoints. You can configure advanced business logic on the backend, fetch data from other different resources. Everything happens really fast. You have a lot of storage. Whereas with Airtable, you're way more limited. You can extend the functionality of Airtable with Airtable scripts, of course, but it's not going to be a full-on, performant backend ever. So that's something to keep in mind. If scalability is important for your app, if your app needs to be fast, then don't go with Airtable. If you're building an internal tool that has a very simple data structure, or you're building an app for yourself, go ahead and use Airtable. Especially Airtable shines the most where you're having a simple use case. You don't need many users and you don't need it to be fast. And the best part is if you have collaborators, everyone can jump in and make changes because it's a very simple spreadsheet. Whereas you don't want everyone to open Xano and mess there with your function stack. So you can think about it like comparing Wix to Webflow. Wix has some basic functionality, but it's not performant. It's not as customizable. You can't really design anything you want. Whereas Webflow really, allows you to build almost anything you can imagine. So it's kind of like that. That's a good analogy here. If you want cheaper options, you can go with Firebase or Supabase. The only thing is, especially if you are not technical, you're going to pay the difference with your time. So basically with Firebase and Supabase, if you don't know how to write any code, if you're not familiar with SQL and NoSQL and so on, when you have to deal with the security policies on the back end and so on, it's going to take you quite a lot of time. Whereas with Xano, you can figure that out quite fast, even if you're non-technical. There's a lot of tutorials out there, and you can basically figure out a way to make it work. So yes, it is definitely a jump, but either you pay with the money or you pay with your time. That's at least how I see it.
Great. Thank you, Emmanuel. And I wanted to add that we are also writing articles on the databases, popular databases for Wized that we will release in the future that may help you decide which database to go with. Personally, I know Xano offers good customer support. That's definitely something we'd look for in the backend. I don't know about the customer support for Firebase or Supabase. Supabase is probably community-based. They have an active Discord forum as well. But I don't think it's official. It's community members helping community members. Moving on. So Geoffrey asks, I am new to the platform and I may not have found my own answer to this question. Is there somewhere within the UI to view and or edit the created JavaScript file? I'm learning JavaScript and I would like to see what Webflow is using.
I suppose you meant what Wized is using in this case. Well, you can always inspect the page and try to get the scripts. And I mean, I guess a lot of it is going to be minified, but you can see the configuration object and you can try to wrap your mind around what each line of code is doing. But for now, depends on how technical you are and how much JavaScript you learned, whether you'll be able to make sense of it or not. But it's for now, you cannot just edit that script with pure JavaScript. But maybe in the future, we'll add some extensibility. We'll see.
Thank you, Emmanuel, for the answer. Next question from Darshil. Can we make SaaS tools using Wized by utilizing OpenAI? Some use cases, can you highlight a bit more complex than Wanderlust?
I mean, you're kind of limited mostly with your own creativity. So I don't have too many $1 million ideas, unfortunately. Otherwise, I'd build it myself. But you can use OpenAI pretty much for anything. The way I would think about it is not to try to build like a super new, shiny AI startup, because that's kind of easy to copy and hard to come up with a really good idea. But if you have an existing SaaS, I think there's a huge opportunity to add basically AI features to it. So let's say, for example, that you're having some, messaging feature within your app, and maybe some users don't really feel like writing those messages and coming up with something coherent on the spot. So you could embed basically ChatGPT within your app. So I don't know, that's just one idea, but it's really up to you what you want to build. Like, the integration is there, you can connect with the REST API, and then it all boils down to your idea basically.
Great, thank you, Emmanuel. Himanshu is asking, how can we implement pagination in the UI when the data in requests are returning 100 plus results? Currently, the only way to limit results in a data in request is adding filters. The limit records option in the configurator isn't working. It always returns all the records matching the query. Any idea how to implement pagination / work around this?
First of all, thank you so much for the bug report. We'll add this to our list of issues and we'll work this out because limiting records within the UI should basically work. Yeah, regarding limiting the results for data in request, you could probably do it on the server, and then basically within your Wized request, you could have something like a counter variable which counts the pages, and then send that in the request every time and have the validation done on your server. But yeah, otherwise, what you could do as a workaround, depending on how much data you're having, is you could also filter the data on the front end. So you could use a variable inside of Wized, and then instead of rendering the data directly from the request on the page, you would render the data from that variable, which is filtered. So yeah, you could set up then some filtering logic in Wized and then just filter through the data that you're getting. That's the solution if you want to do it on the front end. Otherwise, you can basically pass an extra parameter and do it on your backend. So you have both of these options depending on your use case. But yeah, filtering, fixing the filtering is definitely something we need to do ASAP.
Nice. Mike is asking, with Wized, will I be able to produce everything that Webflow's logic or membership apps can? I haven't learned logic or memberships yet, so it would be a big time saver if I can only use Wized.
I would actually advise you to do the opposite. So if you can solve a problem with Webflow memberships and Webflow logic, go ahead and use that. If you need more advanced functionality, then stick with Wized. Basically, Wized offers everything that Webflow logic and membership does, and so much more. So if you don't need any advanced functionality, then just use logic and membership. Otherwise, if you want to create some advanced authentication logic, if you want to build a complex app and get data from third parties and so on, then yeah, stick with Wized. Also, what Wized offers is live reactivity on the site. So you can build basically true web apps. With Webflow logic, you can, for now, submit data to different CMSs and so on, which you can do in Wized as well. But things aren't reacting on the site live. Whereas with Wized, everything happens live on the site. So let's say if you're building a to-do list, you can add different items in real time. You can remove those items in real time, and yeah, do way more than you could with Webflow. With Webflow, unfortunately, you can't do those things. So,
next question from Joffrey. I have come across a piece of software called SmartSuite, which is a mix of Airtable, ClickUp, and Notion. Is this on your radar for creating a connector? If not, is there any docs available to guide us in building one for ourselves? At the moment, I am just creating my calls with the REST API. For my use, it is basically CRUD operations from Webflow forms against my custom-built CRM.
No, we did not get many requests for SmartSuite, but yeah, the best bet that I have right now is for you to continue doing what you're doing, have calls created with REST API, and with our REST API integration, you can pretty much get everything done that you want. We also have a video that explains to you how to read API documentation and how to configure different requests inside of Wized. So if you haven't checked that out, definitely have a look at that. You can just search for Wized how to read API docs or something like that, and you're going to find it.
Great. Thank you for your answer, Emmanuel. Next question from Jeremy. Is the attribute solution for filtering / load more going to be included in the update? From original information I was given, it was. Not sure that it is still the case.
So filtering is already included for a while. You can, basically filter data from Wized with Finsweet attributes, and it works out of the box. So that's been covered quite some time ago. We have also tutorials on how to set it up. And regarding load more, we will most likely not support that. I might be wrong. Maybe someone said something else, but as far as I understand, it doesn't really make sense to use the load more attribute with data that you're getting from a third party. So yeah, if you need to build load more functionality, you can just build pagination on your backend.
Next, from Ferdy. I'm rendering an array and want to change the background of each odd item to gray. I'm using the v.I operator to see if the percentage modulus is triple equals 0, and then set style background color. But that doesn't seem to work. What is the way to do this?
I'm thinking that if you want to do that, you don't even need to use any JavaScript. You can just use CSS to change the color of every second item. And I would have to look up the syntax, but it's basically with nth child. So check out CSS properties for that, definitely. You can do that with pure CSS. There's no need to use Wized for that.
Great. Thank you, Emanuel. Moving on from Michael. For someone that is new to Wized and new to Xano, apart from the Intelligence Center, are there any YouTube channels, free or paid courses, or websites you would recommend with a structured learning path?
So aside from the Intelligence Center, definitely check out Xano's videos on YouTube. Check out their channel, and probably they also have like a learning playlist that will get you from beginner to intermediate. So definitely have a look at their channel. They covered really a lot of ground. They have several people making tutorials, and they have hundreds of videos out there. So I can highly recommend it. Most stuff that I learned about Xano, I learned there. So I would encourage you to do the same, basically.
I could suggest that Bailey from Black Peak has a course or a set of resources on their website, and he conducts office hours for Wized, I think every week or every month or something like that. So please check out Black Peak, and you could find some resources there.
I can highly recommend it. It's a lot of really good questions are being asked there, and you can find a lot of edge cases covered there. So highly recommend that resource as well.
Great, thank you. Next question from Mike. Will Wized support eventually be available through Finsweet Plus? I can take on that question. Simple enough. So Wized support and Finsweet Plus support are not related. Wized users will always receive support. Right now, we are offering it through the live chat. In the future, we will have a forum, just like Finsweet Plus, where you could post your questions and the community could reply to those posts. So they're not related. And I'm not sure if Finsweet Plus people would receive priority. I don't think that would happen, but I can't give a firm answer on that, of course. So we've come down to our final question, and that is from Michael. What apps for use within business websites would you recommend we offer to clients that can only be done in Wized to help us stand out from competitors? It's a great question.
I think the better question here would be to ask, what do you want to work with, and what sort of solutions do you want to develop for your clients? Basically, you can use Wized to build almost anything that would normally require you to use a front-end framework like Svelte or React or Vue.js. So whenever Webflow is not sufficient and you need reactivity and request fetching, authentication, and so on, this is the type of app that you can offer to your clients. So the potential of what you can build is limitless, It all boils down pretty much to your creativity and what you can think of. But yeah, it's more up to you what you would enjoy building. So yeah, think about which sort of clients you want to serve, and then what functionality they have on their website and how you could create a much better experience than what they already have. So let's say if you're within a niche like property development, maybe you want to build a dashboard for the agencies to communicate with all the contractors and so on. So it really depends on your niche and, you know, the ideas that you have that you can bring to the table.
Yeah, some popular examples are booking platforms for hotel reservations or restaurant reservations. You could build a social media app where users can post and comment. You could build a live chat functionality. You could build a marketplace or a teachable like education platform.
Like a learning management system, yeah.
Perfect.
You could embed quizzes for like a learning experience.
Like FN Trivia, I think last year when Wized was still new, we built out FN Trivia. That's a good example. Again, well, I think that was 2 years ago. And then last year for Webflow conference, we had the QR code Pokédex, wherein it was a fun game. All Finsweet people had these jackets with unique QR codes, and every person could scan the QR code, essentially catching a Finsweet member. And if you caught everyone, you'd then win a prize. So something like that.
Yeah, I think it more boils down to the niche that you're in, and, you know, which sort of things would provide value in that space.
Joffrey asks, I am working my way through all of your Wized videos. Thank you for those. What other training suggestions would you have?
I would suggest try to build something. Either like a project you saw somewhere, and try to shorten the feedback loop for the errors that you're making. So try to make as many mistakes as possible in the shortest amount of time possible and resolve those mistakes one by one. And this will help you learn the most in the shortest amount of time. So the best thing you can do if you watched the videos already is jump in and try to build something that you don't know how to build yet. And when you have a project that's challenging you, but is still somehow achievable, that's where you will grow the most and learn the fastest. So
great advice. And my personal suggestion would be that think of any app or any business idea that you may have. Write down the functionality that you're looking for, so you have a clearly defined project scope, and then either get a template from Wized resources or Webflow templates, or you could build one yourself, and then work off that checklist project scope that you wrote down. So building that out would give you the best learning experience. Great. So those are all our questions. We will have more such AMA sessions in the future. Thank you for coming. All the best for your projects. If you have any questions regarding Wized, please reach out to our support. Send us a tweet. Stay in touch.
Thank you all and have a wonderful day. Bye.